because you can adjust the training. Like if they want to focus, like for here we do the health class training, and so you get a little bit of freedom in your curriculum. You can meet with the coaches and say like, I'm really interested in this, but this is my experience. This is how much time I have, and we can kind of work something out. So some people don't follow the traditional, like we're going to do Jiban Zhuan for 6 months. They might come and learn something like Bagua because they're more specifically interested in that, which is good, but we take their kind of history into account. And so because of that, we have a lot of like balancing between each student. But it just depends if they can all come to class and be ready to train, then everything's possible. We get quite a lot done, and having that kind of like focus throughout class is really important. Keeping the class motivated is really important. So if you have a group of people that are similar, that's really awesome.
Why is it called a health class, by the way?
Just because of the focus of the class. So we differentiate just between traditional and health class. It's Yang Senban, so it just means like this is the class, our focus is on health. So when you come here, we're having that conversation that I just mentioned. With the traditional class, the conversation is one-sided. It's you come to class and I tell you what to do. There's no question. There's no conversation, right? So it's if Shifu tells you that today you're going to go in the mountain and carry wood down, you're doing that. If they say go over there and stand in Mabu for 10 minutes, you're going to do that.
Right.
This is the next form you're learning. This is your homework. This is your bedtime. It's like this.
So are there certain people? Is there some kind of matching ahead of time? Do you see someone think actually they probably it wouldn't be a good match for them to do the traditional class? They need to go down the health class route, or do people themselves decide which ones they're going to commit themselves to?
Well, okay, so then the last distinction there would be most everyone who comes as an individual, especially if they're not coming at a younger age, they're going to join the health class.
Right.
The traditional class, actually, for my class, we were the third class, so we say Samban quite often. We're the third generation class. So there was 2 other classes of students before us. Sorry, they have a few fireworks going off stuff once in a while. And but the traditional classes are typically only Chinese students. My class, the third class, was the only one that was completely made up of foreigners. There's been people who want to join, and there's people who will train with the traditional class when they come here, but they're kind of like visiting students. So they'll train with traditional class for a month, but at the end of every day, they go back to their own room. They have their own bed. They have, they don't have the same discipline where they're not like, they don't have someone leading them every day. Yeah. If you're mature enough to come halfway around the world to come here on your own, you don't need the structured discipline that the traditional class offers. You're already serious enough to train on your own. So you will join the health class. That being said, I do think that there are some people who might benefit from being in a setup like that class, like the traditional class. It's very hard to arrange because you need people to train together for a long length of time. Like my class was really lucky because that aligned. And we actually had a group of, a different amount throughout the years because some people kind of dropped out throughout and changed plans in life. But we graduated with 13, and that's still a pretty big number, considering where we're all coming from. So it is pretty hard to do that again. I'm not sure if, I know this school, I know Shifu won't be able to do it again to the way he did with our class for 5 years. It's my hope that someday I could emulate something like that, replicate it. But that's kind of a long-term dream.
Yeah.
And you have to find the right time, the right chance.
Yeah. It sounded like there was something very special about your shared experience in the traditional class and what you achieved and how it's defined your lives thereafter. Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, that's my family now,
Yeah. So from being a place where people would come to you and you would think about, students arriving and training at the school, then with Wudang Wei, that seems to be very outward facing. That seems to be outreaching to
Mm-hmm.
all the corners of the world to try and form a connection and a training relationship in different ways. Did you have the intention to create that platform before COVID?
A little bit, yeah. Like this has kind of been my long-term plan. I've had like the names booked. I've had like the sketches and the storyboard, like how I want to plan things, because it is kind of like I want Wudang Wei, and I've got the other channel, the Wudao Music, and then I've got one other one that I want to have like conversations like this actually, and have like a tea time. And I've had this plan set up for a long time of really just a embodiment of kind of how I feel I approach what I do with Wudang, and how I think that approach can be useful as a resource for other people. Because I think that there's a lot lost in the modern conversation of traditional martial arts. There's a lot lost. People tend to focus on parts of that. You know, they hear traditional and they start arguing about history. They hear martial, they start talking about fighting. They hear art and they start fighting about neidan, you know, cultivation. And I really think that these things are, while they do have their own respective field, they have a very important correlated relationship that is useful, that we need to use together. And if you lose one piece of it, you kind of just fall over. You know, you can't have a two-leg table.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So with these three things, I've had this plan for a long time of like, how would I express this to the world? And I wanted to have these platforms eventually to have that chance. And it's nice to have it, you know, it's a little bit forced, of course, with 2020. But I mean, even like the 2 years before when I was here and I have students coming, you know, we'd get into these conversations and I'd talk with them, I'd be like, you know, I really want to have this online. And they say, oh, you should do it. And I'm like, oh, I'm not ready, you know, so.
Yeah.
It's been a long time coming, and I hope it keeps growing.
Yeah. So with your plan, when you had this idea about how will I express this to the world, did you have in your head the idea of the mind of the receiving student in South America or Europe or Africa? Did you think, actually, you know, if someone's not been here in Wudang, where do I start, or what blocks will get in between us in communicating something that's taken me X amount of months or years to understand myself?
Well, that's still like the ongoing question for me too, is because like I'm setting up these courses. I've got a Patreon thing running where I'm teaching some students more directly. We're kind of building our own little mini community to the side where we can kind of share our experiences. But that is the big question, because like, I mean, you know, right now we're not even in the same time zone, so it's, you know, it can be kind of difficult on one level where even though I have freedom to go outside and do things, if I'm having a class at 9 o'clock or midnight or 2 in the morning, like, you know, it is difficult. And that's a big question. What I mean when I say I'm kind of embodying my perspective and sharing that approach to people is I just mean like as people, like what you said, like how like in Wudang Wei, for example, the videos I've tried to put out is I'm really trying to systemize and like break down piece by piece to where I don't know if I can explain to you what we're doing in 5 minutes, but if you kind of take this piece and then tomorrow we'll take this piece and we'll keep adding it together, and you get a more comprehensive look, right? And then when we're doing other things, then I can say, hey, you remember that detail about this? Okay, carry that over into here, okay? And that's the small scope. That's the mini scope. Like each individual channel I want to have like that. You know, so the martial arts Wudang Wei is just like, here's all the basics. Now, when we do something, you have back onto. You need those roots, right? We still need those roots. And with the music, I want to do the same thing. Even though that's still kind of my ongoing practice. With the T-Talks, it's explaining these theories and these basics, because I need people to be equipped with the vocabulary so I can get into the real explanation. So I'm more thinking like people to people, and maybe I should lay it out a little more clearly, is that the perspective that I want to approach is, or that I want to use for people, is the same thing we use in Taoism. So it's correlated. We have the three treasures. You know, we have Jing Qi Sen. And I really like this because what speaks to me about Taoism, what speaks to me about training, is there are these different layers. You know, it's not just one piece. You can't just have Jing. You can't just have Shen. You know, you just have a spirit. Okay, you have no foundation in the world. You're not here. You know, if you have just an empty vase, it's not very useful. You have to put something in it. So, you know, we've got these different elements, and the way I think about it is we can kind of loosely translate that into body, mind, and spirit. So
Yeah.
Here's my method for the body, Wudang Wei. Here's my method for the mind, the tea time and the talks and the academic stuff. And here's my thing for the spirit, and that's the music. So
Nice.
kind of paint a picture as opposed to just, you know, tracing.
Yeah.